Every second, 600 quintillion hash operations are performed to try to find a new Bitcoin block. A hash is a mathematical function that takes an input of any size and returns a string of text as a result. This string is fixed in size, deterministic, what means that if you give the same input, it will give always the same result, and unpredictable. You never know in advance what the result will look like. SHA-256 is a hash function used in Bitcoin mining. No matter what you pass to it, it returns a 256-bit string. That's a 256 position string of zeros and ones. If you pass the word hola in lowercase, it will return a 256 position string of zeros and ones. If you pass hola in uppercase, it will return another 256-bit unpredictable string that looks nothing like the lowercase hola. And if you pass it Don Quixote, which is a book over 2,000 pages, it will return a 256-bit unpredictable string. That's what a hash is, a way to summarize or find a unique fingerprint for any piece of information. Bitcoin mining is an activity where anyone who wants to can build a tentative new Bitcoin block with a set of transactions from other participants who want to confirm them and apply a hash to it. As simple as that. What makes it not so easy to mine a block and get the 3.125 Bitcoin reward is that the Bitcoin protocol doesn't accept all hashes as valid. If it did, everyone would mine blocks, there would be a coordination chaos, and we wouldn't know what was spent first. To avoid this, the Bitcoin protocol is set to mine more or less a block every 10 minutes and has a difficulty adjustment mechanism to set a minimum hash result every 2 weeks to validate a new block. So, how is the minimum target expressed? What is it? It is a very low 256-bit value. If hashing a block can give you any result of 256 positions of zeros and ones, the Bitcoin difficulty target right now asks that this number starts with about 80 zeros and then 176 other values. Can you imagine how hard it is to get an unpredictable 256 value result that starts with 80 zeros? It's like saying, let's flip a coin and make series of 256 tries. Heads is 1 and tails is 0. Now you need to get 80 tails in a row. Difficult, right? That's how hard it is to mine a block. That's why miners hash a tentative block, and when they don't get those 80 leading zeros, they change some parameters in the block template and hash again to get a different result. And if they still don't get a valid result, they change something and hash it again. And so on until they get a valid result or another miner gets it. And then the process is restarted with new transactions. Now, let's go back to the initial fact. Currently, Bitcoin mining as a whole performs about 600 quintillion hash operations per second. 600 quintillions, right? And even so, it takes 600 seconds on average, or 10 minutes, to find a single valid hash. That's 600 quintillion operations per second, multiplied by 600 seconds, that total 360 sextillions, or a third of a septillion in hashes, of which only one has 80 zeros on the left. Crazy, right? Let me repeat it. Out of a third of septillion hashes, only one gets to get the 80 leading zeros on the left. Hola, ¿qué tal? Os habla Lunaticoin, and welcome to the fascinating rabbit hole of Bitcoin mining. You can mine with anything. Your computer surely produces hashes in the order of thousands or millions of operations per second, a figure far from specialized mining machines that produce 200 trillion hashes per second. But you can still mine. In fact, if you remember, you only need one valid hash to mine a block. Not 100,000, not a billion, just one hash can open you the doors to the realm of miners who have solved Satoshi's puzzle. But of course, there is a very low probability, and the amount of hash rate that you contribute is what gives you more or fewer chances. In this context, projects like Bitaxe have appeared, bringing higher hashing capacity per second, or hash rate, to anyone who wants it, without having to invest thousands of dollars or deal with the high consumption, noise, and heat of a complete mining rig like an S19. Accessible mining for everyone, but still far from professional machines figures, and thus more of an introduction tool to mining than a realistic income source. That being said, and despite the harsh realism of numbers and probabilities, this past week we witnessed a historic event. Block 853,742 was mined by a solo miner using a $200 Bitaxe. And in today's show, I bring you an interview with Skot, the creator of this open source miner that is already changing from the ground up what seemed to be the only evolution path of the mining industry. The podcast is again a video interview recorded in English with an available Spanish dub version. The show was recorded in late May, when everything that happened last week was still science fiction. The funny thing is that we discussed that topic and predicted what we thought would happen once a Bitaxe managed to mine a block. And as that time is now, with this conversation you will have everything you need to understand what a Bitaxe is, and if you can, I highly recommend watching it on YouTube, as you will also see a collection of historical mining machines that we showcase and build the story of Bitaxe upon. Today's episode is a special interview with someone who radiates pure Bitcoin passion, and I can't thank you enough for this exploration of Bitcoin rabbit holes that I get to do thanks to the show. Thank you for sharing the episodes that you like the most, for your messages, and also your support. The biggest boost I received in sats last week is from Santochi Nakamocho with 6,000 sats. And also, this show is thanks to my sponsors Hodl Hodl, Bitrefill, CoinKite, Minter, and La Dobla Bullion. And before I leave you with the episode, a very brief moment for Hodl Hodl. Hodl Hodl is the website where you can coordinate with other peers to buy or sell Bitcoin without any extra question. As simple as that. You need a Bitcoin address where you want to receive those fractions of Bitcoin, and some time to find the offer you want. Choose the currency of your choice, the payment system that interests you, and select the offer with the price premium you're willing to pay. That, together with the amount of data you're willing to share. Some sellers will ask you for personal data and some others won't. Select the offer that best suits your needs and follow the steps indicated by the platform so no one takes what isn't theirs. Got questions? Check out the tutorial on my channel and start stacking ultra-vitaminated Bitcoin by following the link in the description. And now, let's get to the show. Skot, happy that you're here. I'm really looking forward for this talk. And I want to start with a different beginning. Okay, I want to show you something.
Okay.
You probably know what's that.
Oh, but okay. This has got to be like an S1 or an S3.
It's an S1. It's an S1. Yeah, for the audience, for whoever doesn't know what it is, this is an S1. It's a beauty from 2013. It's the first ASIC miner from the now king Bitmain. And funny enough, it was 180 gigahashes. It had a consumption, it has a consumption of 360 watts per hour. And it has a total, you can see some of them, it has a total of 64 chips, 32 per board.
And just two boards? Oh,
Two
yeah, I can
boards.
see them there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
cooling is inside. Like
No heat sinks on the outside.
Yeah. Some people, I mean, it's fully customizable. I bought few of these, and sometimes you get them that they switch the boards, they unscrew them here, and they switch so that the cooling is out on the outside. It's a funny stuff. You can see that it was the early days, and they were just building it with whatever they had that it was on stock, I would say.
So I have a quick question for you about this machine, because I had some hash boards, but I never actually had a machine. Did it come with an enclosure, or was it?
No.
That's exactly how it came, with the circuit
That's
board
how it
exposed.
is. That's how it is. Funny thing, it has an Ethernet port. Yeah, that's fine. But you couldn't plug, I don't know how to say, like, because at the time they were using like computer power supplies.
Okay.
Yeah, and normally you have these pins, no, that you, for a computer, when you are
Like for the
setting
motherboard,
up
like the
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you have a pins, and this is how it happened in the next models. I would say at least S3. I have an S2 working. It's amazing, 1 terahash S2, but from 2014. But in this board, you couldn't connect the pins. You have, I can show you. You had like here, maybe I will manage.
Oh yeah, the GPU power supply. It's just screw terminals for the power.
Yeah. So
Wow.
for the power, like I have the power supply, you have two cables and you have to put them in and wire. So this was the beginning. It's in fact like it is like more or less 10 years difference from the first Bitaxe.
That is so cool. That's so cool. And it's wild to think about, because Bitmain obviously makes those ASICs, the chips, and that's a big deal. Like even then, they're probably like hundreds of nanometers, the chips. Like that still was like very expensive, very time consuming, like not a trivial thing to do at all. So they obviously put a lot of work and money into making those chips, but a lot less time into building the whole system, making an integrated thing.
I want to speak a little bit about Bitmain later, but for the audience, so what we just saw is two machines, 10 years difference. One machine has 64 chips, 64 ASICs. The other, Bitaxe, has one. Bitaxe has, this model is the Ultra. So this one has 3 times the hash rate, a tenth of the consumption, and as I said, only one chip. How to explain it? What is a Bitaxe? Let's start here.
I mean, 10 years difference in time from when these two products come out is, especially in Bitcoin and in computers in general, is an eternity. That's a really long time. So just the advancements in the efficiency and moving those chips forward in efficiency is what's responsible for the reduced power consumption and the massively increased hash rate. Because like I said, I think those first chips, I did I did mess around with those initially. That was my first one I started playing with. I think it's the BM 1380 is the part number of the chip on there. And I want to say it's over 100 nanometers, the feature size on the chip. And now, of course, we're talking about 5, 4, 3 nanometers. So that's a really big difference. And that plays directly into the efficiency of those chips. And so I actually think, because 100 nanometers 10 years ago wasn't like really cutting edge either. That was still cheaper and slower and less efficient, even a decade ago. So they were starting off where they could. We didn't know how big of an industry this was going to be. They didn't know, if their initial investment was going to pay off. So they're kind of prototyping, I guess. As you can see, like how bare bones that whole system is, they were kind of prototyping. And it's, as Bitmain got bigger and bigger, as mining sort of got more lucrative, I guess, they're throwing more money into it and starting to get these allocations at TSMC to make really badass chips. And so that's my take on how we got to where we are now. I mean, this is my whole shtick, is that we forgot about open source in the process of this. These guys were just marching ahead. They're taking on tons of risk to do this, throwing tons of money at it. But the open source ethos of Bitcoin, which is a fundamental part of Bitcoin, was just totally lost, I think, during those 10 years. So one hand, very cool to see what happened. On the other hand, unfortunate.
Yeah, I want to stop you there because I see we're still talking about S1, Bitmain, and how they started, which is funny. I didn't thought that we would be talking so much about it, but I'm gonna keep pushing on that.
Okay.
I just checked because when I fell down the mining rabbit hole, I went hard and I created my own spreadsheets with all the numbers and so on. I have like a private spreadsheet with all the ASICs, all the ASIC miners that existed, the ones that were commercially enough to be in this spreadsheet. And I have all efficiencies, everything's here. And these chips that we just saw from the S1, they had an efficiency of 2000 watts per terahash. So here we're talking like in an ultra, I think that this is a S19 XP, no? So we're talking around, correct me, but I think it was like 27. What's no?
It's nominally 21.5.
21. From 2000 to 21. So that means that it took 2000 watts to get 1 terahash of computation. Meanwhile, in these chips, it takes only 21 watts to get 1 terahash.
Yeah. That's pretty wild improvement.
Yeah. So this is the risk, as you were saying, that Bitmain took in all this time to keep pushing this industry. Of course, they were getting the money, they were getting the orders, so that they were not like just doing out of profit. They were having tons of profit.
Sure.
But before going back to the open source part, some people might still not know what is this other machine, because it also looks like amazing. This looks like hardcore in a way. Also, it's just a board and a fan and a little screen here. What is it, and how it came to life, Skot?
Well, I guess if you're not watching, Luna's holding up the Bitaxe. The Bitaxe is a project I've been working on for, I don't know, probably almost 2 years now. And it is a open source ASIC miner. So like I mentioned earlier, these mining machines from Bitmain and others were coming out. They've been working on them for over a decade now. And they're pushing the mining industry forward. They're these big industrial machines. They run at kilowatts. They're hot, they're noisy, and they're meant for use in server farms, Bitcoin mines. These are industrial facilities that have industrial power available. They have industrial cooling, and they generally are not someplace where a person lives. So I'm an electrical engineer. I'm a Bitcoin fan, and so I'm very interested in mining, specifically mining hardware. And I wanted to get involved and make my own miner and do it with ASICs. And I was bummed out that there was no open source information at all for me to get started doing this. It's all proprietary, closed source stuff, fairly secret. And I mean, I guess it makes sense. I don't like it, but it makes sense, right? They're all competing with one another for the most efficient machines, and so they're obviously not sharing information with one another. But the Bitaxe was initially just born to like satisfy my curiosity to build a Bitcoin miner that was based on an ASIC. And it's not practical for a mere mortal to make their own ASIC, the chip. So I decided to take a chip from an existing chip, and the most popular chip is the ones from Bitmain. So I decided to take one of those and try and reverse engineer it and build a miner around it. There's no documentation for this at all. So reverse engineering everything about this chip, miner, firmware, everything about it had to be reverse engineered. So kind of spent a long time, but I spent a long time digging at it and trying to figure out how it worked. I actually got, I think, so my hash boards that I got off eBay, I think they're off of a S3 or maybe an S2. It looks very similar to the ones you have, but the chips are arranged in a diagonal pattern. So, but I
Can
think it uses
check.
the same chips.
I think it might be an S3, like the boards from an S2. The S2 was a black box, huge black box.
Okay, so
And
it's not that.
yeah, and the boards were like one next to another. It had like plenty of boards, and they were very thin.
Here, actually, I
It's
got it right here. I'm going to grab it.
Okay, go.
All right. So it's the same size as the ones you have, but you can see that the chips there appears to
It
be
might
more of them.
be. It might be an S2. As now I have doubts, but as you see, they are very. They have this plug-in, this connector. I don't know how to say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a PCB edge connector. Kind of looks almost like PCI-ish. I don't know
yeah,
if it is or not.
yeah.
Um,
Now I have doubt, but I'll check. I have some boards here behind of S2. I'll check later. But this is yeah, it's beautiful to see also how they evolved. And for example, now we're getting into details, no, of the history of Bitmain, in fact.
yeah,
But for example, like we know that the S17 was not a very good model. They had a lot of problems.
right.
It was the moment when the engineer left to create his own company, which is now MicroBT, and the head sinks, they were falling because
Yes, they were falling off.
they were sticked. They were not screwed to the board. They had a big problem. Then they fixed them by screwing them and so on, which is funny because in this S1 that I just showed you, they were screwed also. So they went back to basics. And it's funny when you analyze all the evolution of the ASICs, of the ASIC miners, how they sometimes had to go back and to do what they were doing already from the beginning, just to
Yeah,
fix
yeah.
some.
You really get the impression that Bitmain is moving fast. They're trying things in production. You like having analyzed a number of their machines now, you can see things like you said, like they're changing something and maybe that doesn't work out so well. And so they go back and then they try it again, right? Because like you said, the S17 had the heatsink soldered on. That was a total disaster. And so they moved away from that for the S19. But there's J Pros and also K Pros that have soldered on heatsinks. Like they've gone right back to it. So they're moving really fast, which is obvious because they're the market leader. And they just kind of, I guess, just fuck around and find out in a way, which is cool. I can respect that.
Yeah. So as you were saying, you decided to go that path of, okay, I would like to create my own miner,
Yeah.
but then you realize like, okay, nothing is open. I guess that there is no producer creating open source ASIC chips. That's something that doesn't exist.
There was like some of those early ASICs, right? In the beginning, 2012, 13, there was a bunch of different people making ASICs. There's some websites where they have pictures of them, and a lot of them never came to market. And I've heard a rumor from the CoinDad at the Bitcoin Mining Museum that they're actually one of those original chips was open source. I don't know if it was Avalon or someone else, but needless to say that didn't succeed. So it was canceled early on. So yeah, by the time that I started looking at it, there was no open source chips.
So, and then you focus in doing this reverse engineering of taking one chip and
Yes.
then trying to build around it, trying to understand the signals
Yes.
that it was giving you, the outputs of that chip. So you basically had to understand how an ASIC miner works and to build, even sometimes harder than from scratch, because when you are building from scratch, you create it the way you want. You had to understand the parts and to build around something you had. I suppose that you started with the S17 chip.
Well, I started with this one. I bought this board, which has the BM 1380 on it, which I think is their first one. And actually, here, this is proof of work right here. You can see I
It might
took that
be
one off.
it might be the S2 because if my spreadsheet is correct, this is the same chip that I have in the S1. So it was just a matter that they added way more chips. So it might be the S2 because it was like only a few months after. And yeah, exactly like 4 months after. And it had 1 terahash already So it has the same chip now I'm saying.
I think you might be right, because this is the only connector. This sort of board edge or PCB edge, PCI looking connector is the only thing on there. It's like the big fat power connectors here, and then that's clearly data. So you can imagine them plugging a bunch of these into a big enclosure or big backplane.
And then you reverse engineer, because your idea was the whole time to work with one chip, to create something, a miner that had one chip.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the place to start. This is one seemed to be a lot easier than doing 60 or 32 or whatever. So I wanted to start with one. Around this time, they also had the Antminer U1 and U2, which were single chip, like USB sticks. So I I was too cheap I should have just bought one of those, but I was not fully committed to this project and didn't want to spend the money. So I got these boards for way cheap on eBay.
Give me a moment, because this is starting to be like a showing thing. So give me a moment.
All right, you got one.
So yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, and here we can see if it focuses. Yeah.
There we go, Bitmain.
Yeah,
so
I don't know
think
if
you
it's
look
the
at that chip,
U1.
I think that chip is the same, the BM1380.
Might be. It's only that I don't know, because they had like the U1, the U2, and the U3.
Okay.
U as a USB. So I don't know if this is the U2 already, or it's still the U1, which yeah, I'm checking now, and it could be even the same chip still.
I think so, because like I said, I don't know why in retrospect I didn't just buy one, but I was looking at pictures of them online. I was trying to reverse engineer that one. I remember the PCB was blue, and I was trying to reverse engineer it from just pictures of it people had posted online. And I got pretty far down that rabbit hole with it, because back then there were some very rough data sheets for those chips. I think the 1384 and the 1380 had like these poorly translated from Chinese, I assume, data sheets that kind of outlined how they worked, and it kind of said, what the pins were, not with very much description, but there was something to work with there. So I started there, just using this as a way to understand how these chips work, like what's the general layout and things. Like you say, because I had to learn how mining machines work, how the ASICs work, and to be honest, I had to really go into depth with how Bitcoin mining works and learn that for myself as well. Like really learn how it works, because even back then, these chips they're ASICs, which is application specific integrated circuit, and they are very application specific. Like all they do is Bitcoin mining. So you really need to know how Bitcoin mining works, what sort of the format of the block header is, and what's important with the Bitcoin block header to know what these chips are going to do and what the responses from them indicate. So dug into that whole thing with this chip, but I and this was a while ago. I actually got overwhelmed and pretty much dropped it for a bit while I was working on that. Like, this was just a hobby thing, so I was just screwing with it when I had free time. But I did get overwhelmed with that, and never really made my own circuit board or anything for that chip. And I dropped it and worked on other things not Bitcoin related for probably a couple years, and came back to it with the S9 and the chip from the S9, because Brains had made their firmware back then, the Brains OS, and Brains OS was open source, which was cool. That was something I was like, okay, I can dig into this. I can see how it works for basically the first time, see how it works. And that was the first time I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a circuit board. I'm gonna run it. And CG Miner also supported the chip from the S9 back then. So I actually built up a board. I had to reverse engineer the mechanical parts of the chip, like, you know, the measurements of the chip itself, to make a footprint to put on the PCB, and look through some, again, poorly translated repair documents from Bitmain to figure out what pins have what signals on them. But through that, I was able to make a circuit board and get it working with CG Miner. So that was the first time that I got a single chip miner actually working, which was, for me, it was super, super exciting. I'm not the first person to do this. There was already Gecko Science, who makes USB sticks. They had Sidehack, who runs Gecko Science, had already been at it for a while and had a couple models released at this point. But he had a USB stick that had a single, he might have even had a double S9 chip on his USB stick, and that was something you could buy. It wasn't open source, but you could buy it, and it was powered with, or it was controlled with CG Miner, which was open source. So that was also helpful to be able to look at that and kind of, let's see, I built up the hardware on my own from reverse engineering, but the firmware, the software side of things, I was able to just use what they had, which was really cool. That got me going.
So let's say that from this CG Miner firmware part plus building from scratch the hardware part, that's how with some more work, some more hours and months in between, this is more or less how you got to like the product that we were seeing at the beginning of 2023 that everybody fell in love when they saw the first images. I believe that it was with the S17 chip. So this is more or less the process that it got you to more or less what we know.
Yeah, it really is
today.
It really is. I started posting on Bitcoin Talk and on Twitter to my 5 followers on Twitter, and wasn't really getting much response.
I have the dates. Just I investigated. So
okay.
You have the first Bitaxe mention on Twitter. It's from March 2022.
Okay.
Which is early. I believe that BitMaker was still not pushing Nerd Miner at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was before that. And then the whole Nerd Miner wave happens. And your next image is from beginning of 2023. So kind of like 9 months difference. And it already was looking like this. So, you had the first board was like a square.
Yes.
Like just a simple square. So there was an evolution. And I thought that maybe this was the moment of silence, of overwhelm. But you said before like 2 years that this was only 9 months. But you had like 9 months of working in the dark only for you, or at least maybe not on Twitter. And then the next thing we see is this, and everybody was like, okay, I want it.
Well, yeah, right. I guess I didn't have any followers on Twitter, so I would post some images and get like no responses, or like one of my friends who, wasn't a Bitcoiner would be like thumbs up or something, but no one would respond. So I didn't really post a bunch on there. I did do a little bit more on Bitcoin Talk. I'm sure you can go on there and see some of my posts on Bitcoin Talk. This is kind of an interesting story. I mean, maybe for the history books, but so I was posting about it. I think this was still when I was on the S9 chip. I don't remember if it was actually called Bitaxe, because I used to call it Day Miner. It was going to be a solar powered Bitcoin miner originally. And so I thought like it would be connected directly to a solar panel, and then it would just turn on during the day and it would mine just during the day. So it was called Day Miner. Anyways, somewhere in there, I had posted about it on the internet, and someone responded back to me that was like very interested, and they, wanted to build one of these things, and had some great questions, and we were sort of, discussing like how this worked. And this person was super interested, and it was really cool. and they were, they had expressed that they didn't have like the equipment necessary to build this thing. And so I was like, well, you know what? I've got a bunch of these circuit boards. Like, why don't I just send you one? He's like, oh, well, I'm far away. I mean, it was in Eastern Europe somewhere, far away. And I was like, well, I would love to have some help. Like, I'll mail it to you. Like, give me your address, or give me like the post office address or whatever, if you don't want to give me your home address, and I'll send it. And no response. A little bit later, he gets back to me. He's like, this is amazing. He's like, my parents said I can't give out my address because I'm 14, 14 years old. So it was just this young kid who was super interesting. He knew what he was talking about. It was totally amazing. But he, obviously was in school and didn't have a job and couldn't buy this stuff, and also couldn't give out his address to strangers on the internet, which I guess is a good idea. But I just thought that was really funny. That was my first sort of technical collaborator on the Bitaxe, which may have not been called the Bitaxe yet.
I see why, by the way you talk, you always had in mind this home mining part. And I want to bring in a question that, because some people has seen the Bitaxe already around. People is asking me, when are you going to talk about Bitaxe? I say, soon, wait for it. Because they want to get it, they want to use it, but some people don't really understand what they get. And as we are doing this comparison between the S1 and Bitaxe, we just saw that Bitaxe does 3 times more computation than an S1, and for a tenth of the consumption. But I checked it, and at the time that the S1 was released, it was giving you more or less 0.2 Bitcoin per day.
Yeah.
Bitaxe is giving you, I will say it in Bitcoin so that people understand. It's giving you 0.0000004 Bitcoin per day. So 40 Satoshi per day. People might think, okay, I can get a Bitaxe for 150 euro here in Europe. I know I can mine, perfect, but why? Why should I Bitaxe? Why should I mine using a Bitaxe? Why you had in mind that people will want to home mine with a machine that, if you just look at the numbers, it might not make sense?
Well, I can start off with why I wanted to do it. It started off just to satisfy my curiosity, because I really like how Bitcoin, I really like Bitcoin. Obviously, the whole concept behind Bitcoin is fascinating to me. I also really like electronics, and I think the concept of mining Bitcoin is technically fascinating. So I wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it. I also, bought an S9, and I had an office where I had free electricity. So I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to just run my S9 here all the time, and it's going to be great. But I very quickly realized that I could not be in the office when the S9 was running, because it's so hot, it's so loud. Even though I had free electricity, it still wasn't worth it to run this machine. So I quickly, I set it up to run at night when I wasn't there. But I wanted something that I could run personally, at my house. And that is not these machines. These Antminers are not designed in any way to be run in a residential setting at all. So it just started off because this is what I wanted to do, but I've seen a large interest from people who want to try Bitcoin mining, and they don't have a suitable place to run their big industrial miner. So you can get one of these and you can plug it in, and I got 3 of them running on the desk right here next to me, and you probably can't hear it on the microphone, and I'm not stressing because it's so loud or hot, and I don't notice it on my electricity bill. So it's very practical to run these at home. And I think a lot of people are getting into it because this is the first time they can really mine. The initial purchase price, while not very good on a dollars per terahash level, it is low price, right? You can get one for 150, $200. And so that's a very cheap way to get into mining, even if it's not highest hash rate for your dollar.
Hope you're enjoying the chat with Skot. Let me interrupt you for a moment to briefly talk about my other three sponsors, Minter, Bitrefill, and CoinKite. Minter is the app and peer-to-peer protocol for intellectual communities with open collaboration. It's like an open source Notion with network connectivity, followers, and integrated Lightning Network to send tips for content you like. These past weeks, I've been closely following everyone joining Minter to add them to a post on my blog, lunaticoin.blog, creating an updated repository of Bitcoin and tech-focused Minterians. I encourage you to use this summer to test Minter and start your Bitcoin learning blog. The team has been working hard over the last 3 months to soon launch an extraordinary open collaboration improvement. When that's ready, we will start building many knowledge castles. You will see. Take advantage of these weeks to get into it. Bitrefill is where you can buy anything and everything paying with Bitcoin on-chain and Lightning. Last week I asked on Twitter how many people had Bitcoin on-chain or Lightning ready to spend, and only 50% of Bitcoin holders did. Interesting. For me, Bitcoin is also a great medium of exchange, and on Bitrefill, you can get everything you want without extra questions. Need to upgrade your computer? You can do it by stacking a couple of Amazon gift cards and getting the one you want. Want to get an Apple product? They also have gift cards from that too. On HODL HODL I stack, and when I want to spend, Bitrefill is my go-to because no place makes it easier and with such an extensive offer. And CoinKite, the Canadian company making the most iconic Bitcoin hardware like the Coldcard, OpenDime, Stop Signers, and block clocks. Last week I talked about the benefit of BIP85, a tool that makes life easier when you start tinkering with multiple software wallets and end up with a notebook of seeds that you can keep track of. Today, I want to introduce you to an exclusive Coldcard feature, the Vault. It's a safe within the safe that is your hardware wallet, a place where you can store other mnemonic phrases for easy access. The Vault lets you keep other seeds, whether created with BIP85 or not, just 2 clicks away without retyping them. It's like Sparrow, but in hardware. If you want to try it, you can activate Vault in advanced settings and integrate this top tool only found in Coldcard Mark IV and Coldcard Cube. If you don't have one yet, follow the link in the description and fall in love with them.
You know, I'm hearing you, and it's very interesting how you're explaining it, because a lot of people that gets attracted by mining, the second question they ask you is, how much am I gonna, or how much this machine is it gonna give me per day? And if you can tell me in dollars, better, please. You know? So the mining aspect, hearing you, I understand that it has like 2 ways, no? Of course, it has the way of like, I'm doing this as a business, so I need kind of like a smaller or bigger business plan. And this is what everybody has been doing for the past 15 years, more or less, despite ASICs started in 2013, but before they were mining with GPUs and so on. But yeah, they were thinking about, okay, how much electricity is costing, how much am I earning? But you're talking about mining like in capital letters and not even thinking like how much you're going to be doing. You're talking about mining. You're talking about becoming a miner. And this is maybe what we forgot in these 10 years. We forgot that mining is even creating 1 hash per minute if you want, and you are mining. So I don't know if you can elaborate on that, because I think it's something beautiful for a Bitcoiner. It's something very interesting for somebody who is still not into Bitcoin, because one Bitaxe can teach you, even a nerd miner. This is why I believe that nerd miner was so interesting. Like it was teaching you about this concept. But how would you like? Do you see it like this? Like like we forgot that mining is not necessarily competing on the edge with these big guys like Foundry, like Riot, and all these big miners.
Like Bitcoin itself is completely permissionless, right? You don't have to ask anyone's permission. And we have a little bit of guidance from Satoshi's early posts about how he thought Bitcoin mining was going to work. But there's no rules. Like, no one's going to stop me from doing this. No one's going to stop you from doing this. That's kind of the censorship resistance that Bitcoin is so famous for, is that if you want to do it, you can just do it. And there's no rules that say you have to become a big industrial miner and start a business and become a publicly traded company and make tons of money for your shareholders to be a Bitcoin miner. That's just the way a few entities have decided to do it. But there's no reason why it has to be that way. It doesn't have to be this, if you're not making money, quit kind of thing. Perhaps it has gotten to be like that because of the way the mining machines are now. Bitmain makes these big machines because they need to target customers who run big mining farms, because those are the biggest customers. So obviously they would make machines for their biggest customers. And that sort of feeds into this whole industry of the, like, this is a business. This is a for-profit business. That's fine. Again, it's permissionless. No one can stop you from doing a for-profit business, Bitcoin mining. But the flip side is true too. You can just sort of altruistically mine. You can just sort of hack on this if you want. You can be a home miner. And I think that segment of home miners it can be bigger than it is now if there actually is some hardware, some devices that's made for home mining, that's practical to use at home. I was at Bitcoin Park in Nashville a couple of weeks ago, and I was on a panel with the CEO of Core Scientific, which is a massive miner that famously went bankrupt, and also Grid, which is also a big miner in Tennessee. And they both echoed this. They're both publicly traded companies in the U.S., so they're big, and they both echoed the sentiment that this mining business is really hard, right? Here's people or organizations that have publicly traded stock, meaning they can just raise tons of money to fund this operation through their stock offerings. And they're still saying, like, look, this is really hard. So I think it's slim profit margins, and it's tough to make it work. So I don't want that to be a barrier to entry for someone who just wants to try it or just wants to run one at home.
What you just said is very interesting. Somebody in the Spanish community was telling me that these companies, they are having infinite money because they have a printing machine, which is stocks. They can get more money and get more money. And so that's why the competition is getting so hard, because everybody can print money in a way and then get better machines and compete. And then that's why we're seeing the hash rate skyrocketing as we're seeing in the last 2 years. And what is interesting is that people should know that you can mine at home, maybe not for a profit or not in a way that you will compete or you will make such a huge margin as people could do in the past. But you can still mine, and you can still, which this is what people, it's hard to see, you can supply hash rate to the network. It's a tiny fraction if you only consider yourself, but you are supplying hash rate to the network. So you are securing in a little percentage the network.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about this a lot because one Bitaxe or one S19, right? I got one right behind me. And, one S19 is insignificant in the grand scheme of things, right? We're at 600 something exahash on the network, and that thing only has like 100 terahash. So it is insignificant in the bigger picture. One Bitaxe is insignificant in the bigger picture, but we're not going to just get one of them out there, right? We're going to get a lot of them out there. Just as that S19 is a collection of a bunch of small chips, a collection of Bitaxes together is significant and can have an effect on the network and can secure Bitcoin and can provide, a non-trivial amount of hash to the network. So it's just a slightly different way of distributing the hashing machines around the world, but it can still be just as effective.
And you can still be lucky and mine a block. It's not that you are only doing it for the sake of being a miner and nothing else and just spending electricity. By the way, I calculated, and to me, it's costing me around 10 cents a day of electricity. And I was really generous with numbers. So probably it's even less. So 10 cents a day, that's the cost of, in my case, solo mining. But this is what I want to push now, is that you can be lucky. Your machine can be lucky because this machine has only one chip, no? And I think that the S21 has 324 chips. So, okay, yeah, S21 has higher chance because it has 324 chips. But let's imagine that one of these S21s solves a block. So finds a hash with the enough difficulty. When one of these ASIC miners solves it, it is one of the chips who solved it.
Yeah.
It's not the whole machine as a whole.
Exactly.
It's one chip like this one.
Yep. And just one hash from one chip, for that matter.
One hash.
Yeah.
This machine is doing like, I don't know, in millions, so that people could, but yeah.
It's doing 500 billion hashes a second.
You need one.
You just need one.
You need one. And this, I know it's, if you don't know about mining, if you don't know how it works, it is hard to understand. You also need to know that the chance is really low, but it's higher chance than, for example, winning lottery, like way higher.
Yeah. This is another reason that I say that people might want to run a Bitaxe. There's a bunch of different reasons why people might want to run a Bitaxe, but this is a kind of compelling reason why people might want to do it, is for lottery mining. So you have, like you said, you have a chance at winning the entire block reward, 3.125 Bitcoin plus all the fees. It's not a very good chance, but you have a chance. It's actually like 1 in 8 million per day. These stats might be just a little bit old, but it's like you run for a whole day. It's like 1 in 8 million chance in a day that you'll.
I check it today. It's the same chance.
It's the same chance.
Half terahash. Yeah, it's like 1 in 8 million.
Okay, so not good chances, but actually, if you look at a lot of like here in the United States, each state runs its own lottery. You look at the odds for some of the intermediate prizes on those lotteries, and it's actually the same odds with, depending on the Bitcoin price, potentially a lower payout on the state lottery. So, a lot of people play those lotteries. You can do it with a Bitaxe, and if you just leave it plugged in, it's like buying a lottery ticket every day. So that could be cool. I think that's, a compelling reason to run it if that's what you're into.
A very well-known lottery in Europe is Euro Millions. This is how it's called. And you have a chance. It only happens Tuesdays and Fridays. And you have a chance 1 in 140 millions.
Ooh, okay.
Each ticket costs you €2.50. So that's why I calculated how much is it costing me to run Bitaxe per day. 0.10, even 0.15, let's say. Doesn't matter. It's a fraction of the ticket of Euro Millions, and the chances are, as we said, 1 in 8 million, not 1 in 140.
Wow. What's the jackpot usually for that?
It can be big. It can be yeah. The big. This is the other big difference. Yeah. If you win the Bitcoin jackpot, it's gonna be in a recent price, 75,000, let's say, you're gonna get like $250,000. But if you hit the jackpot of Euro Millions, you're gonna get millions, maybe 10 million euro, something like that. So yeah, the jackpot is bigger, but I think that the last number, and I didn't calculate it, is like if we would do an average, like comparing the return on the investment, nevertheless, Bitaxe is winning by far.
And so that when I did it for the California State Lottery, I think they also have a jackpot in the millions of dollars, but they have a prize that's like 4 out of 5 numbers you got right, and that has a jackpot that's only I think $150,000 or something like that, and it has odds. I think it was like 1 in 10 million or something. So that starts to be like pretty comparable to the prize that you would get from a Bitaxe, and comparable odds, but it's also every day with the Bitaxe.
Exactly. Every 10 minutes, in fact. Of course, the odds are different. If you only check in per block, is way more than 1 in 8 million. But every 10 minutes, you're playing a lottery. So I guess that in your mind, you think about Bitaxe pointing to solo mining pools, or why not also pointing it to a pool? What's your take on that?
To me, I think it makes the most sense to solo mine with your Bitaxe, because I think that the possibility of solving a block on your own, preferably to your own pool, you can set up and mine to your own node at your own house, completely self-sovereign. I think that's an exciting way to do it, but I'm also kind of just in it for this technology, and I really like sort of how Bitcoin network works. So that's the way I do it. But the Bitaxe doesn't prescribe any specific way. You can connect to any pool that you want. So you could connect to a traditional pooled mining server, and like Ocean is a good one. What you have to be careful is when you mine with a really low hash rate device like a Bitaxe with a pool, is you have to look at what the minimum payout is. Sometimes they'll have a minimum payout that is so large that your Bitaxe could take years of constantly running to even get to the minimum payout in which you could withdraw that Bitcoin from the pool. So obviously that wouldn't be a good way to do it, because you just never get paid. You should solo mine and or lottery mine in that case. There's 2 pools that I'm aware of, maybe 3 pools that have implemented Lightning payouts, and they will actually pay you out like 5 sats or your 40 sats a day if you want over Lightning, because the transaction fees are way lower. I know that Ocean Pool does this, and so you can just stack sats if you want with your Bitaxe, and that's a cool way to do it. I'm glad to see that their pools are implementing lower thresholds for paying out, so that people can mine like this if they want to. Totally up to the user what they want to do.
Has any Bitaxe that solved the block already?
Not that I know of. Now, there's no reason why I would know, unless someone tells me. So we it's up to the pool to put in their name into the extra nonce portion of the block header, and that's what the mempool uses to identify who mined it. So none of the Bitaxe pools that I'm aware of have solved a block from a Bitaxe specifically, and no individual has come up to me and said that they have solved a block, or has told the whole world on Twitter, which would be amazing. But so
will happen at some point.
I don't think I only have a very rough estimate of how many Bitaxes are even out there. I think it's in the 5,000 ish, but I don't know, because I don't even manufacture them, so I don't know how many have been sold. But if you just look at statistically the hash rate associated with 5,000 Bitaxes running, I think that we are not even due for a block yet, right? On average, it would take longer with that hash rate to solve a block. So
5,000, that is something in the ballpark of 2.5 petahashes.
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other day I recorded a podcast with a guy who at the beginning of the year solved a block with 1.5 petahashes.
It can happen. It can happen. That's extremely lucky, though. If we're just talking about averages, I would say, 2.5 petahash, we're not overdue for a block.
Yeah. Because this is something also beautiful that you get when you start checking, when you get a Bitaxe, it's like you check the stats more often. It's stupid because I had S17s, S19s I have currently, and it's kind of like you just plug them in, and after the first day, you just don't even think about it. You don't have such a close connection. Meanwhile, with the Bitaxe, I have it next to me, and I'm checking like more often because, for example, what I want to know is which is the highest difficulty that it reached. And this, for people not understanding what we're talking here, is like Bitcoin, in a fast way of explaining it, sets a target and says, okay, if you want to mine a block, you need to prove me that you work harder than this, no? And we can think about it as the difficulty. There is two parameters, difficulty and target, but just to understand. So we started at difficulty 1 in 2009, and then this has been growing. And now I think it's like 89 trillions.
Yeah.
Not American trillions, but European trillions. So way more zeros than in the American trillions. And I think it's like you have to get a hash that has a difficulty higher than 89 trillions. So this is what I'm checking. Like, okay, where are you getting? And no, I'm getting in the billions sometime. So it's not, I'm not getting even close. But which is the highest difficulty you have seen a Bitaxe having?
I was just looking on my NerdMiner right here. Actually, NerdMiner has a fantastic display on it that will show you the current difficulty, which is 84.38 trillion. So yeah, like you were saying, if you have a hash, it only takes one that is higher difficulty than 84.38 trillion, then you submit that to the network and you get the block reward, right? That's solving a block. So on my Bitaxes that I have on my desk, I have only seen in the billions or giga, like double-digit billions, which is pretty far away from double-digit trillions. However, I was talking, and so I don't have any way to see how all the Bitaxes are doing out there. So this is only what people decide to tell me. But I was talking with some of the guys from Ocean yesterday about actually a bug that we have with their pool. And they can see when a Bitaxe connects to Ocean, we send along a name in the stratum response that says Bitaxe, and it says which Bitaxe model it is. So they can see the shares that have been submitted by Bitaxes. And he told me that he's seen 1.2 trillion from a Bitaxe. So that's pretty good. That's getting there.
That was close. That was very close. So yeah, this is how close you can get. And at some point we will see, and this is going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter.
We will see somebody solving a block with a Bitaxe, and then everybody will. This will be maybe the first big wave of newcomers to Bitaxes. We're running out of time. I had a plenty amount of questions that I see that I will have to convince you another day to ask you, because we're not going to be talking about Osmo. We're not going to be talking about how an ASIC works. But it's good.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part 2. This is all good stuff.
Yeah. This is I have plenty of questions of how and what did you learn from Bitmain while reverse engineering them. But I want to ask you like something more philosophical in a way, because you had an evolution since you went really public, no? Since this first model with S17 chip, we saw the S19, then we saw the Ultra with S19 XP, and the last one is the Supra with the S21 chip. We have to wait for Bitmain to do something better. Maybe now it's going to come with the S21 Pro chip at some point. This has been the evolution. Also, community has been pushing models. Some of them are already out, so you can get them and play with them. but some are in the work, like one with 16 chips, one with 4 chips, and so on and so forth. How do you see the open source mining scene evolving in the future? Because we just saw a few months back that Canon released a model, I think it's the Avalon Nano.
Yeah,
that is costing like the same price more or less than a Bitaxe can cost you. It's not open source and so on, but it has 4 terahashes. Efficiency maybe is not that great, but it's also you can manage that. Is 100 and something watts per hour, and so you can see that somebody is realizing that people is enjoying the home mining again, and they are pushing commercial products in that direction. How do you see this whole scene of home mining, pleb mining, lottery mining moving in the next year, 2 years?
I mean, at this rate, it's growing really fast and in a bunch of different directions too, which is totally fine. Via OSMU, the Open Source Miners United, I've been contacted by all sorts of electrical engineers and mining engineers who are interested in this stuff, and they have a bunch of different directions that they're taking it. So there's a lot of cool things I think that are hopefully going to be announced soon. People are working on lots of different projects, and if you base your project on the Bitaxe, then because of the GPL license, you are obligated to open source it. So I'm excited to see what these people are working on and have it be open source. Lots of cool things coming there. And that is definitely a big goal of this project, is to get this information out there so that you don't have to reverse engineer this stuff. You can just start from where the Bitaxe is and add whatever crazy cool idea you have to it and release it and get it out there in the world. I think that that's very important. Bitcoin was open source initially. And I think that is why maybe not one of the main reasons, but one of the big reasons why Bitcoin was successful. I don't think if Satoshi had not open sourced Bitcoin, I don't think we'd be here talking about it today. So getting that out there in open source, it both decentralizes the development of it. So there isn't just one point that authorities can go to shut down. There isn't like Bitmain headquarters that they can go to and just shut them down, and that's the end of it. It decentralizes, it gets it out there, and it also increases the rate of development, this sort of exponential growth that with open source that we've seen from things like Linux or Apache and web servers, and just kind of all the whole like internet industry has really moved very fast because of open source technology. I think that will be helpful for Bitcoin. But you asked kind of where I see it going, and I think I personally want to work on lowering the cost of these miners. The Bitaxe is made in relatively low quantities right now, so it's pretty expensive. That's just how manufacturing electronics works, is they're expensive if you're not doing many, but you can lower the price as you do more and more. So I'm pretty focused on making lower cost Bitaxes, maybe a little bit more performant, so that, maybe up to a terahash, that kind of thing, and have them be cheaper, just so that there's lower and lower barrier to entry. Anyone can just go and grab one of these and plug it in and not have to worry about the price or anything like that, just so that we can get that, I really want to get the first million Bitaxes out there, because that will be roughly an exahash. And if you look at the stats, an exahash solves a block on average every 4 or so days. So I think that's what's going to get this movement going. Is we have a Bitaxer solving a block every week. That's going to sell the next million or so units and really solidify this movement. So that's what I'm working on.
To close our talk, I want to share a feeling. I've been mining for the last, 5 years, 6 years, pleb mining, small scale, 1, 2, 3, 4 machines. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I had my Bitaxe that I decided to go full stack. So I have had nodes Bitcoin nodes since, 2018. But in this case, I said, no, I'm going to create another one. I'm going to have only Bitcoin Core. I'm going to install public pool. So I'm going to have my own pool.
Yes.
I'm pointing hash rate, little or a lot, whatever, doesn't matter what the Bitaxe is giving me. I'm pointing it to my node and I'm mining. And I never felt disconnected as now, because it is me and my node, me and my pool. And I only need Sparrow and a hardware wallet, and the sovereign stack is complete. And it's all on me. And doesn't matter what Foundry does, doesn't matter what Unpool does, doesn't matter anything. It's all on me. And this is something I invite everybody to do it. They can do it already with the hash rate that their machine, their PC can provide them. They can get an inexpensive nerd miner. They can get a Bitaxe. But this feeling of seeing the graph in your pool and knowing that this hash rate is yours and that this pool is getting the blocks and creating new templates from your mempool. No somebody else's mempool. No, your mempool. And there is this conversation between these layers, no? The machine, the Bitaxe, the pool is yours. And then Bitcoin Core, which is connected to other peers through the internet. That's just fantastic. So
it's so fantastic, man. That is awesome. That is what I love.
So this, I hope that this is a first conversation. I hope the next one I can have a better voice and I can perform better. But it was a pleasure to talk with you, Skot. And I really look forward to talk with you again.
This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, let's do it again soon.
What a talk. Skot is incredible. I love his energy and how he's changing the nature of Bitcoin mining forever. The snowball started rolling with BitMaker and his nerd miners, a great introduction to understanding mining, but only capable of 70,000 hashes per second. We needed something else to really put us in the competition once we hit a critical mass. And that's what Skot did and what Skot gave us with his Bitaxe. They started with 300 gigahashes and now surpasses a terahash with the S21 Pro chip. I think, unlike what many professional miners tell me, what Skot and the entire Osmo community are doing with open source mining hardware, along with CSH and other people with pleb miners on a single hashboard, will be significant in the global mining scene. In terms of hash rate, I'm not sure if it will reach something like a 10%. That seems a bit too much. But I do think it could achieve a 1%. That would be an insane 6 exahashes. And it almost makes me dizzy to say it. But I think it's feasible with this mix of pleb miners and Bitaxes over 1 terahash. Skot tells me that with 1 exahash, we would get a block a week. What fascinates me is thinking that those decentralized mine blocks would be found without caring one bit what OFAC says about sanction addresses. And how beautiful is that for decentralization? If after hearing Skot you want to get 1 Bitaxe, Bitronics from BitMaker has prepared me a 3% discount code for the occasion. Besides checking out Skot's design, you can also have a look at the techier version BitMaker made with a color screen and more data. It's called the NerdAxe. The link is in the description along with the coupon you have to use, Lunaticoin in uppercase, for the discount. And now, let's talk about Libertades, a gold and silver coin thanks to La Dobla Bullion. La Dobla Bullion is the virtual and physical store where you can get hard physical money to stack alongside your satoshis. Coins and bars of gold and silver of all kinds, like Krogorans, American Eagles, or Sovereigns. Last week I introduced Mexico's Libertades, the coins, and today we continue with them. Last week I told you that the silver Libertades were the first modern investment coin minted in 1982, 4 years before the silver eagle. And now, listen to this. That is very interesting. A particularity of gold libertades, along with gold Krugerrands, is that they are the only other investment coins that, without having a face value, have recognized legal tender for the value in Mexican pesos of the gold they contain, at any given time. Silver libertades, for their part, are the only silver investment coins that has this same characteristic. What do you think about that? Silver libertades are legal tender for the value in silver they contain. I don't know how widely accepted they are, but it reminds me a bit of what Bitrefill facilitates me when I stack satoshis, allowing me to spend them on goods whenever I need. It seems in Mexico you can stack silver and spend it whenever you want for its silver value, which will make the premium you are paying for the coin maybe not worth it, and probably is better for you to sell them for Mexican pesos and then buy whatever you want, but the possibility is there. And it's a top feature, monetary feature, at least to remind us where we come from, and that not long ago this was the way to go. I have few more characteristics about libertades that I will share in the third part and final one that I will do next week in the last episode of the 6th season. Want to see them? In the description you will find a link to La Dobla Bullion website, and there you will have the chance to have a look at them. That's it for today, and if nothing goes wrong, I'll greet you soon in a very special season finale.